Alright, so now that we've got the main thread threaded and we have the bobbin thread in place, we want to make sure that the main thread gets caught by the bobbin in the correct manner, so that once we start sewing, it'll work as it's supposed to. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here. This is the hand wheel, and this actually manually turns the main needle, up, or the only needle, up and down. And so whenever you are threading a bobbin, this is actually going to be pulled out. It's a good thing to remember. And they do actually show you this on the little sticker on top of the machine or in your sewing machine manual. Very important to remember. When this is pulled out, your needle is not going to move. That disengages the needle. It's really important because when you are threading a bobbin, you don't want the needle going up and down. First of all, it could inadvertently catch your fabric and ruin what you're doing. Second of all, it's a safety issue. If you have your hands nearby and you don't realize, you could hurt yourself. So you want to make sure that's not moving unless you want it to be moving because you're working on something. So we're going to make sure this is re-engaged just by pushing it in. Very simple. And when we turn it clockwise, the needle is going to move and the fabric is going to move forward as if we were sewing something forward. If you turn it counterclockwise, it's going to move the fabric backwards. You'll see later it's the same function as hitting the reverse button, just in slow-mo. So we're going to turn the wheel clockwise a couple of times. That's going to bring our needle up and then down into the bobbin area of the machine and back up. Alright, so I've turned the wheel a couple of times, and now we want to check to make sure that it is catching correctly from the bobbin thread. Now, it's really easy right now with our machine because I have purposely used two different color threads. So if you look down here, you can actually see the red thread being caught up by this purple thread here. And to make it easier on yourself, especially if you're using the same color bobbin and main thread, you can actually swipe scissors under here, and it will pull out your two threads. And you'll see the ends of both threads, and that's when you know it's been threaded correctly and you are good to start sewing. Okay, to start sewing on our fabric here, the first thing is that I'm going to put my fabric underneath the needle and try to aim it so that the needle is going to stick directly into where I've drawn my seam allowance line. And you can draw your seam allowance line, which is very helpful to make sure you get your stitches in where you want it to go. You can also use this seam allowance guide on the plate beneath the presser foot to help you out if you don't have a line. And that, you'll see, has seam allowances to either side for various increments, 3/8, 4/8 of an inch, which is what we're going to use, 5/8, 6/8. You can also purchase these magnetic guides that will latch onto your plate and provide an edge, a wall, if you will, where you can guide your fabric through against and make sure you maintain an even edge. So we're going to go with our drawn line, and I'm going to position it so the needle is going to start by inserting into the seam allowance line right there on the edge of that line. And you can test it too. You can hand move your wheel and get your needle to poke in right where you want it to start, and we're ready to go. So again, make sure your presser foot is down. That's going to ensure that your fabric moves through smoothly. You want to make sure that your hands are positioned to the sides of this needle. You definitely do not want to get your finger stuck under needle. Hurts a lot. Don't want to do that. So make sure you're really just acting as a guide and keeping your fingers out of the way. The machine has the function of moving the fabric forward, so do not feel compelled to pull your fabric forward. You're going to get uneven stitches if you do that. It'll just make things harder for you. So let the machine do its job, and you do yours by just guiding the fabric through. So we're going to start by pressing the pedal, and for a couple of stitches we're going to go forward. We're going to stop. I'm going to go up to the reverse stitch button, push it down, and then hit the foot pedal again. Go back a couple stitches. That's going to lock your stitch in. That's going to make sure it's almost like tying a knot at the end of your stitch line. It's going to make sure that your thread does not fall out. That's really important. Then after a couple of stitches backwards, going to let go of that reverse stitch lever and go forward the rest of the way. Again, remember that you are sewing, you're in control. You're like a driver of a car. You have a foot pedal, it's like the gas pedal. You can go as fast or as slow as you want to, so don't go out of your comfort range. You can sew at a nice, steady pace. When you get to the end of your seam, you are going to stop, hit your reverse button again, a couple of stitches, let go, and then stitch all the way to the end of your fabric. Now you're going to lift up your presser foot and pull out your threads, And you can either snip with scissors. There's also this handy function on the back of a sewing machine. It looks like a dental floss cutter, and you can actually just put your threads up there and snap them just like that, which is kind of cool, little trick. And your seam is sewn. And then once you open it up, you'll have an even stitch, and you have successfully sewn 2 pieces of fabric together. So as I said before, machines vary quite a bit, especially older models to newer models. Today, most models are digital, so instead of turning your hand dial through various stitches, you're pressing buttons to access it through programmed stitches that are included for that machine. On our sewing machines here, they are manual still, and so I'll just kind of direct you to this machine over here. Again, the ones at MassArt vary just a little bit, but you'll find the similar features on them without too much problem. They have 1 dial on this machine, sometimes you'll find 2, and these are going to control the length and also the type of stitch. So on this machine, it actually does both. On this machine, you'll see a number 1 with these tiny little dash marks. That means you're going to get a short stitch. Number 2, you're going to get a slightly longer stitch. Number 3, you're going to get an even longer stitch. Once you head over into number 4, 5, 6, and beyond, you got these fun, kind of funky zigzag stitches. You'll get one where you get a straight, even, unbroken stitch from side to side, or a broken stitch. You'll get one that looks kind of like a heartbeat here. And these can be, typically when you're getting into this thing, you might be doing decorative stitching so that you actually want to see the stitch. But you may use it for other reasons too. It's really up to you. Additionally, you have these positions. These numbers here refer to the position of the needle. The dark line that you see is that you are going to get your stitched line to the left of center. When it's on the right, you're going to get it to the right of center, and the 4 and 2 means that your needle is going to jump back and forth. And again, you can see a reference to these different stitch types and lengths on this part of the machine. Again, this varies a little bit machine to machine, but it's all pretty visual, it's all pretty common sense. You'll be able to figure that out. Over here, this dial controls the tension, and that is how tight or loose your stitches are. For our purposes, we're going to stay somewhere in the middle. Anywhere between 4 or 5 is really fine for our purposes. If you get into more sophisticated sewing, you might want to move that a bit around, and your sewing machine manual can teach you more about that should you have interest.